What are the best fantasy football fits among the 6 potential suitors here for Deshaun Watson here in 2022? It's time to break it all down here on another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. We're waiting here to see what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson. It's a little murky, we know, with the situation off the field. The charges were not filed there, 22 accusers, so not totally out of the woods, or there's no judgment either way on what's going to happen with the civil suits and all that. But we're going to strictly speak about Deshaun Watson on the field, as all these teams are aggressively pursuing him here. They're meeting with him, trying to gauge if he's the right fit for the organization, because there's a lot of things that come with it. We know if you do that with your fan base. And I know Deshaun Watson on the field, it can upgrade a lot of teams. If you're not having a top 5 quarterback, top 10 quarterback, you're going to go in on Deshaun Watson to at least do your due diligence. And that's what these teams are doing. We have 4 teams really interested, and then 2 teams kind of lurking there that we've heard that they could go after him and take their time and have the resources to get Deshaun Watson and need maybe a quarterback upgrade. So we'll break down those 6 potential destinations for Deshaun Watson. He's meeting with the Falcons. He's already met with the Panthers, Browns. The Saints are also in the mix. And the other 2 teams we'll talk about at the end, the 2 dark horse teams that can come in at the 11th hour, the Seahawks and Eagles here. So we'll break all those 6 teams down in relation to how Deshaun Watson could produce and perform in those situations. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We're free and available for you on all platforms. All right, let's start with the supposed frontrunner now. It's the Cleveland Browns. There's some speculation that they're going to move Baker Mayfield here soon. Maybe he's part of this deal to give the Texans a veteran starting option over Davis Mills. But the Browns are serious about winning big time soon. They saw what the Bengals did with Joe Burrow, kind of jumped them and the Steelers and the Ravens and got to the Super Bowl. So the Browns want to be aggressive. They think they're that quarterback away. They like their defense with Myles Garrett. A lot of the pieces they have there, they like their offensive line. We know with the running game with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And now they have Amari Cooper in the receiving core. Brought back David Njoku, moved on from Austin Hooper. So they have some weapons for sure to establish there, but I think they'll get some more here in the draft. We talked about first-round wide receivers. They'll probably have to give up that pick here to get Deshaun Watson. So I think you look at the Browns and they have really great potential. We know Watson made it work with limited receivers there in Houston. So you just had DeAndre Hopkins, and he put up some big numbers there for the Texans. He needs that one guy outside the deep threat. They do have a player like that in Cleveland, and Anthony Schwartz, if he can stay healthy. He's got some speed on the outside to make some plays. But you figured a lot of 12 personnel with Njoku and Harrison Bryant here in the mix. Good playing off the running game. So good baseline here, good protection here for Deshaun Watson to hold the ball. He likes to buy time and throw deep. He's gotten a little bit better as a check-down quarterback of late there, and he'll take advantage of when Chubb and Hunt are there. But he's looking for the downfield balls, and that's where the big upgrade is going to come over Baker Mayfield, just being able to do that off script a little bit better, buy time with his legs, gain yards that way. So I think it's a good fit anywhere here. For Deshaun Watson, however, there's some things the Browns need to answer there beyond Amari Cooper running game and offensive line to feel really comfortable about this being the best spot for him. But let's start off by saying that any landing spot for Deshaun Watson, if he's available on the field, he's automatically a QB1. He did some work with some really tough Texans teams where there wasn't around him anything. I think the one thing that you might see less of is the volume, where these teams, especially the Browns, have pretty good defenses. So you're not going to necessarily see him throw nuts here. And also, keep in mind he's got to deal with the elements a little bit more. The Texans were a controlled environment down there in Houston. So you go to the Browns, you got to deal with that November issue there with the weather, but Joe Burrow did well through it there in Cincinnati. And Lamar Jackson has had big-time fantasy success as well. So the running ability is going to help Watson a lot there in that situation in Cleveland. And again, the weapons have to get a little bit better here to completely go there. But I would say the Browns are right in the middle of where Deshaun Watson can succeed. But again, he's a QB1 everywhere he goes. I think Cleveland needs to do a little bit more work. And again, what you give up for Deshaun Watson is also going to change what kind of support you have for Deshaun Watson should you acquire him here in 2022. But I think he's a solid QB1, not a spectacular one if he goes to Cleveland. Let's consider the New Orleans Saints next. They've come on strong here. Mickey Loomis, their general manager. Bad cap situation for the Saints, so they could dump some guys in this trade. They're already restructuring a lot of contracts to make it work. They just made a big pickup of Marcus May in free agency, replacing Marcus Williams at safety. So what do you get from Deshaun Watson, the Saints? Well, it depends. We want to see if Alvin Kamara is going to be there and Michael Thomas is going to be there, or does Thomas go to Houston? I know he's had some disgruntled feelings there in New Orleans. They did restructure his contract, but more again for the cap relief here. Does that mean he's on the move and then all of a sudden Marquez Callaway becomes the number one target, which isn't too bad. Callaway really flashed there with that combination of Jameis Winston and Trevor Siemian and Taysom Hill last year. So Callaway, I think they would have to also be in the market for upgrading receiver. But again, the Saints will not have that first-round pick where they're in the wheelhouse to look at a wideout. So that's something to consider. So if they can keep Thomas, keep Callaway, you have Alvin Kamara, Adam Troutman at tight end. Those are some of the key guys they need to keep there in the passing game. Then the Saints are definitely a better destination than the Browns here, because I think the Saints defense not going to be the same here. I know Dennis Allen is the head coach, and they should be a little bit more defensive-minded, but they could give up Marcus Davenport in steals, so that would weaken their pass rush a little bit. Their secondary is going through some changes here as well. They might have to give up Marshawn Lattimore in a deal there for Watson. That would leave C.J. Gardner-Johnson in the middle of the field at slot, Marcus May, their new safety there. So there are some questions there for the Saints and their defense a little bit with Allen going forward beyond Cam Jordan and the established guys, DeMario Davis and the like there in New Orleans. So I also like the friendly confines of the Superdome here to throw often. Then you'll get to go to work on the Falcons. We know they're indoors. You also have good weather in Tampa for those games. And you also have a pretty good situation in Carolina. So the weather is not going to be a factor, just much like it was in the AFC South, where you had Houston playing indoors, the Colts in a dome there in Lucas Oil, and having pretty favorable weather for the most part in Tennessee and Jacksonville. So parallel there. So that's why I think the Saints would be a little bit better destination than the Browns here for Deshaun Watson. Again, QB1, but again, QB1 more in the mid to back end for the Browns. I think QB1 for sure in the higher end where he was with the Texans as a member of the Saints, no matter what's around him. But good offensive line potential there as well, even without Terron Armstead for Watson. So looking forward to seeing this go down soon to just kind of know what these teams are doing at quarterback. So we still have four more teams to talk about: the Panthers, Falcons, Eagles, and Seahawks. We'll break those four teams down in our final two segments here in Locked On Fantasy Football. It is this time of year. It gets pretty maddening here with our New Year's resolutions. Do we stick through it through March? But not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I really enjoy eating them, and you should too. And you should also try their puffs. So if you haven't tried one, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy. They're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar. They're a treat, and they're covered in 100% chocolate. Trust me, I've had plenty of these. These are good. It's like eating a candy bar without all the bad stuff that comes with a candy bar, but you do get the 100% real chocolate. Yep. Including the puffs, all Built Bars are covered in 100% chocolate. Great flavors there as well, including cinnamon churro and banana cream pie. And you can go to the macros chart to believe what we're saying here with Built.com. You'll be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb, all the bars you get for Built Bar. Most of them contain 130 calories, only 4 grams sugar, only 4 grams net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which is not going to give you any protein with 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. There's some great flavors you have to check out. Mint brownie, coconut almond. These are some of the staple flavors there. And they have new flavors coming out all the time at Built Bar. If they think a flavor might be good, they'll make it. It'll be delicious, and it'll be good for you. The only way to get in on Built Bar and check out the puffs and all their other bars that are absolutely delicious and covered in 100% chocolate, go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, we will continue the show here, breaking down the Deshaun Watson suitors and what we can expect from them from a fantasy football perspective. Just a programming reminder, should Deshaun Watson land with the team, we'll do a special on him, much like we did with Tom Brady returning to the Bucs and Russell Wilson being traded from the Seahawks to the Broncos. So we will do that as well, but we're setting the table here as the deal may not go down just quite yet here for Deshaun Watson. If it does go down while you're watching or listening to the show, then you'll know where we like these fits here in 2022 for Deshaun Watson. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Make sure you're following Locked On NFL, Locked On Experts covering the biggest stories around the NFL, including Deshaun Watson on the trading block every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available, just like Locked On Fantasy Football, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's continue looking at the Carolina Panthers. They're the loose third suitor. I guess they're in a tie with the Saints behind the Browns at this point. Remember, Deshaun Watson has a no-trade clause, so he's got to waive that to accept the trade, and then the Texans have to feel like they like the compensation from the team they're dealing with. Preferably, I think they would like to trade him out of the conference, but really the Texans are not contenders, so that's why Cleveland is in the mix. But going from south to south looks really strong here for Deshaun Watson. So the Panthers are in the mix as well. They've been in the mix since there was a hint that Deshaun Watson would be available. They've been just waiting to see what happens off the field with him. So Panthers have been eager to get this done. There's rumor that they have to give up Christian McCaffrey, Brian Burns, on top of multiple first-round picks to get Deshaun Watson here in 2022. We know the owner, David Tepper, is very aggressive and wants to make things happen here on this team. So would not surprise me if they get it done and they just kind of outbid everyone else to do it. They'd have to sacrifice quite a bit here. So the biggest thing we know with the Panthers, they got to fix their offensive line. If they don't have McCaffrey, they have now Donta Foreman in the mix of all running backs. They had a good finish there for the Titans, filling in for Derrick Henry. So Donta Foreman, Chuba Hubbard, that could be your backfield. McCaffrey goes across. We know they have Taylor Moton at right tackle, but looking to upgrade elsewhere. They picked up a good guard there in Austin Corbett of the Rams. So they're definitely looking to make their offensive line a little bit better. Left tackle is in the wheelhouse there when they pick. But again, giving up that first round pick is going to be difficult here with, or just not trying to give up that first round pick. I should say that what do you do there at offensive tackle? Is Deshaun Watson running around a little bit? Remember, they had some stability there in Houston with Laramie Tunsil on the left side. So that kind of helped Watson a little bit. Dwayne Brown also was there early in his career. So left tackle has been a pretty good spot for the Texans. The Panthers really need to address that here. How do they do that? Maybe they figure out something at left tackle. But, yeah, it's hard if they don't have that first-round pick to go after Charles Cross or Nicky Conwu or even a Trevor Penning there in the first round. So keep that in mind. That's going to cost a way to build around Deshaun Watson. But if they can keep DJ Moore somehow, there's a talk about DJ Moore being involved in this trade. I would not do that because, again, why would you want to bring Deshaun Watson to a mess? So Robbie Anderson, they're thinking about moving on from him. Terrace Marshall, good promising rookie from last year, but coming off an injury here. There's not much else in this passing game. So the Panthers would have to do work. And if you know where I'm headed with this, again, it really depends if McCaffrey and or Moore is involved in this. And if there's another means to upgrade their offensive line. But by far, I think the Panthers are not going to be a good destination here for Deshaun Watson's value. Still, again, Watson is talented. His arm, his legs give him a high floor, we know, as a running quarterback. So he's always going to be in the QB1 conversation. But if we're going to rank them right now as we're going through these, I'd say number 1 is the Saints, number 2 is the Browns, number 3 is the Panthers here for his value as a QB1 here in 2022. Now, let's look at where we're attacking here with the Falcons. And the Falcons, again, they might be a little bit more willing to give up more things, including Matt Ryan at quarterback. And we know Calvin Ridley is not going to be in the mix. He's got that suspension here in 2022. 22 for the gambling, so they're going to rebuild there. Russell Gage actually has moved on to the Buccaneers. He signed a deal with them, as well as Rashad Perriman coming back. So the Bucs are making moves to upgrade and create depth at their receiving core, but the Falcons have been gutted with no Ridley or Gage available to them in 2022. We'll see about Cordell Patterson. They're moving on from Olamide Zaccheaus, it looks like. Looks like Kyle Pitts might be the best option here for a receiving target for Deshaun Watson. So again, there's not a lot here, and I don't think they're going to give up Kyle Pitts in this trade. They potentially could. You can't rule out anything here. The Texans covet him, and the Falcons say, hey, we can part with a first-round tight end here to get Deshaun Watson and do things like that. So really depends on the weapons, but I'm afraid the Panthers and Falcons would be more willing to give up the weapons. The Falcons have already been dwindled there at the skill positions. Patterson, they've been on the fence about bringing back, even though he had a big year as a running back, wide receiver hybrid there in Arthur Smith's offense. So a lot of things to look at here. But when you look at the Falcons, again, this could be a gutted team here for any quarterback. So I know there were limited weapons in Houston, and he made it work, but offensive line question marks, there's running game question marks there if there's no Patterson in the mix, and definitely receiving question marks without Ridley or Gage in the mix here for this season and possibly beyond. The Gage is not going to return. We know that. Ridley, we'll see if they try to move him here while he's sitting on his gambling suspension, if that miffs them enough to not want to have him on the team in 2023, ahead of when they're going to have to pay him a big contract soon anyway. So something to look at there with the Falcons. But now let's re-rank them. The Saints are the number one destination for Deshaun Watson's fantasy football value. Browns are second based on what they potentially have to give up and the state of their teams now. The Panthers are number 3 and number 4 on this list. All right, we will get into the two dark horse teams. There's not been a lot of buzz about them. There's some speculation about the Eagles and Seahawks for different reasons there and some similar reasons as well. Check out all the great shows on this network. We're talking about the Browns and Saints and Panthers and Falcons, Eagles, Seahawks. You know, whatever team gets Deshaun Watson, you're going to have some great coverage here on the Locked On Network. We already had awesome coverage from Locked On Broncos. They're one of our great shows, many, many great shows, team by team here with the Russell Wilson trade. So if you want the reaction to big things happening around the league for big teams and teams that you care about and teams that you may be an ardent follower of, this is the place for you, Locked On Network, your team every day, whether it's your real NFL team or your fantasy football team. We're here for you, not just throughout the regular season, but in the offseason as well. So check us out. Once you listen to a few shows, you're going to be listening to a lot of shows here on the network. So many great guys and gals doing a terrific job on this network around the NFL, in fantasy, and across sports. So check us out here, please, on the Locked On Network. All right, it is time to close the show here, looking at the Eagles and Seahawks and what they could offer Deshaun Watson. Let's start with the Eagles. So the Eagles, why they should be in the mix, or I think they should think about this a little bit more. They're sitting on 3 first-round picks. They have the Carson Wentz trade. There was a trade up in the draft last year involving Dolphins and 49ers and all those teams. So the Eagles have 3 middle-of-the-road first-round picks. This would be huge here for the Texans. If you think about their early pick in the draft, 4 first-rounders and 1 draft, that could really happen here for the Texans. The Eagles have that capital to give up easily, and they can just move on there from Jalen Hurts. Now, they haven't really said anything much about replacing Hurts the way we've heard the Browns going after Watson and shaking up Mayfield a little bit. They haven't said anything about that. Howie Roseman came out the combine saying Hurts is the guy, but I think you just can't ignore them given that draft capital and the fact that Hurts is a pretty good player, but Hurts is also limited a little bit. We saw his throwing, and he still needs to develop. You know you're going to get the rushing element from Watson, and you look at Hurts, and he's putting up the numbers there on the ground, and the weapons here. You got Devonta Smith. The Eagles should try to keep him, of course, if they can deal those 3 first-rounders. That would put them in a position where they wouldn't have to deal all that much else to get Watson. That's a great situation for sure. And the Eagles don't have any pressing needs. They're working ahead a little bit to get some depth on their defense and also upgrade their offensive line a little bit. But they lost Brandon Brooks, but they still have some key pieces there, including Jason Kelsey at center. Andre Dillard should return at left tackle. Isaac Samalo. They have some players there for sure up front. So not bad offensive line. Good situation where they trust the quarterback to run. You have Devonta Smith can develop into number 1. They should be in the market for another receiver here. into 2022. Jalen Reagor could bounce back and be a key part. I'm not holding my breath for that, but the Eagles should shore up their 2 receiving spots with Devonta Smith locking down number 1. You have Dallas Goedert at tight end. You also have some potential in the backfield with Kenneth Gainwell. They made Boston Scott a free agent, so he's probably not going to be back. Jordan Howard's kind of a plotting back, but you have Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell to catch passes out of the backfield and get that complementary receiver Smith there. So Smith and Goddard and really the backfield, really enough for a launching point for Watson, as well as the willingness there of this Eagles team with Nick Sirianni to let the quarterback run and open things up that way. So guess where the Eagles go if they get in the mix, folks? I mean, Jalen Hurts was already a QB1 last year, and he did a lot with running. If Eagles get Deshaun Watson somehow work into the mix at the last second, big upgrade from Hurts as a passer. Hurts, maybe even an upgrade as a runner here for Sirianni and Eagles. So Eagles shoot up to number 1 easily. So even now reordering these teams and their best fits for Deshaun Watson's fantasy football value, Eagles number 1, Saints number 2, Browns number 3, Panthers and Falcons. So basically you're looking at 4A and 4B here for the disappointment there. And finally, is there a team that could beat the Eagles and Saints as an appealing destination there for Deshaun Watson? How about the Seahawks, former home of Russell Wilson? There was an early speculation that the Seahawks would get involved. There hasn't been much buzz, which doesn't always say that a team's out of the mix. They could be doing it behind the scenes and not leaking anything so they can keep their plans to improve quarterback well kept secret here. Well, look at the Seahawks. They just acquired a bounty here from the Broncos for Russell Wilson. They didn't have all this. Remember, they had the Jamal Adams trade. They were going to prepare with this offseason without first-round picks. So it would just be the Seahawks going back to what they were. They could even move some of these players here, maybe even a Drew Lock involved. So it could be a flip here to a much younger quarterback and higher upside quarterback at this point, Deshaun Watson versus Russell Wilson. We know you can incorporate a running quarterback with some playmaking skills in this one. Dwayne Brown can be retained here at left tackle. So you have a pretty good offensive line, better than a lot of people think here. Well, look, Watson's going to take sacks by holding the ball, extending plays, trying to push it downfield. But guess what happens when he pushes it downfield? DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are going to be on the other side of this. They also have a D. Eskridge, who they like. They brought in Will Dissly back in the mix. They have Fant for right now, tight end. So pretty good all-around offense. And we know Wilson put up some numbers with those guys, Metcalf and Lockett. So there was some speculation they could move on from Lockett, who's so tied to Wilson. But Watson gets in there. They're back in business here, folks, at wide receiver. So the Seahawks have a ton of appeal. Again, we have it between Jalen Hurts and Russell Wilson producing there in Philadelphia and Seattle last year. We know exactly what kind of production can be had there and then some. So, and Watson is an upgrade to me also over Wilson, being younger, having the stronger arm at this point, and also having the more dynamic running ability and willingness to run here. So that's why, again, it's close, but the Seahawks and Eagles, this is why we want to get them involved and hope that they are involved in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, because these would be incredible landing spots. The Eagles actually, to me, with the other elements they have on their team and looking at Dak Prescott in this division, they would be the team that would really feel like a Super Bowl contender in the NFC a little bit more than the Saints, Panthers, and Falcons, simply because of the fact that those teams have to contend with Tom Brady and the Buccaneers just in their own division, where the Eagles with Deshaun Watson facing Prescott and the Cowboys could win that division, be in position well to get in the playoffs and win some games here. So keep that in mind. The Seahawks, a little bit different reality-wise, because we know the 49ers and Rams just went to the championship game. The Rams won the Super Bowl. So the Rams, however, could lose a little bit here this offseason. And the Seahawks have some work to do to improve their defense as well. So I think in reality, it doesn't help the Seahawks as much, but they're definitely in the mix there with the 49ers, who are doing some things to rebuild and have Trey Lance at quarterback. Arizona had a lot of age, so they're going to deplete there. So the Seahawks could be moving on up a little bit here. With Watson, I don't think they're up there as a contender that I would trust for the NFC playoffs as much, but it's a good situation for Watson succeeding Russell Wilson there. And we know with the Seahawks, they have a little bit of a tolerance there with things maybe not so right off the field, and can kind of work through that a little bit with John Schneider and Pete Carroll. So keep that in mind here with Seattle. So it's still the Eagles, to me, as the best spot. again, because that running ability there, given such an importance in fantasy football and being let loose there. But the receivers are good enough there. So Seahawks are also pretty good. So Eagles and Seahawks pretty close there as the top team destinations here for the fantasy football value of Deshaun Watson. The Saints come up next if they can keep Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, along with Marcus Callaway and a decent offensive line there. The Browns with Amari Cooper would then come in fourth. The Panthers and Falcons bring up the rear here with what they potentially could give up. The Panthers, I think, are fifth. We'll say that. They separate a little bit from the Falcons because potentially having DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey still in the mix, while the Falcons need to address their issues at running back and wide receiver. The Panthers a little bit more offensive line oriented, but the Falcons are not free from that either in 2022. So there you have it. There's a look at the 6 top suitors here for Deshaun Watson, according to multiple reports. The 4 that have been all in on him, and the reports have been coming out. The 2 that have been kind of lingering there because of their draft capital, able to pull this off with not the ideal quarterback situation as well, the Eagles and Seahawks. So those 2 teams, most appealing, but again, most likely going to be one of those other 4 teams here for Deshaun Watson. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Fantasy Football. We'll have reaction to more things that happen in NFL free agency or things that could happen in NFL free agency on our next show here. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Yeah, once the free agency is done here, the teams are going to focus on the draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with inside analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. Have a great day, and we'll see what happens with Deshaun Watson here in 2022.